I don't know what happened to the three doofuses. Where's the third doofus? Is he? He got lost. Okay, very good. All right. But I appreciate them letting me pick on him yesterday as well. There's a couple of theoretical and doctrinal things I want to go over first, and then we'll start getting into some practical applications of what all of this means that I've been discussing with you about artificial intelligence. What you can do, what you should do, how your knowledge of artificial intelligence should guide your decision making, how it's compatible with a biblical worldview toward your future. We're going to talk about college education. We're going to talk about non-college education. And then this afternoon, I am going to walk you through some tips and tricks that you can use with a generative AI model of your choosing to get better results, to verify good results, and that sort of thing, how to actually use it to help you learn. So I want to begin, though, talking about this important passage in Mark 2. I think all of you are probably familiar with the verse, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. It was a conversation that Jesus is having with Pharisees. I think many of you are probably also familiar with who the Pharisees were, but for those of you who are not, Jewish leadership was divided in Jesus' time on earth between three groups: the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the Essenes. Some biblical scholars argue there was a fourth group, but those were certainly the major three. The Sadducees were sort of the liberals of their day. They denied the possibility of a resurrection. They were kowtowing to Roman authorities. They did a lot of things to compromise and make peace with the culture around them. The Pharisees were the opposite of that, or close to the opposite of that. They were committed to maintaining Jewish identity, Jewish culture, and the way they sought to do so was to take a stated law that the Lord had given and add additional rules and regulations around those laws. So they took a scriptural law, commandment, and they added additional ones so that they could not even get close to breaking that commandment. They were, to use a term that you're probably also familiar with, they were sort of the legalists of their day. Jesus had healed someone on the Sabbath, and they argued, and his disciples had also collected food for themselves on the Sabbath on other occasions. And the Pharisees argued that Jesus and his disciples were breaking the rules of the Sabbath. It was here that Jesus then pronounced that the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. There are very important doctrinal consequences as well as doctrinal truths we can derive from this passage. I am only about to explain one of those as it may apply to artificial intelligence. I am not claiming this is the only truth that can be derived from this passage. But if you think about what I talked about yesterday and the various intellectuals, philosophers, mathematicians who argued that no complex mathematical system can be created to cover all other mathematical possibilities, you sort of can see the connection between what Jesus is saying and what they were saying. There will always be something higher than a systematic body of beliefs. There will always be a higher truth that is God's truth, untainted by human corruption, goes beyond what our abilities as human beings can produce. God will always be greater than us. Can we agree on that? You okay? Okay. Now, there is a derivation to this. Because we are made in the image of God, what we produce as human beings will always be lesser than us. We will always be above what we produce. And that's a more controversial statement. That requires us to kind of think through things and to understand some implications of how that matters with artificial intelligence. I suspect that most of you, when you came to this meeting, were a little bit apprehensive about AI. You're probably still a little apprehensive about AI. You're probably still wondering, well, goodness, should I go to college? Should I even get married with AI in this world? I don't know, but actually I do know. Yes, you should get married. But anyway, you have to approach this understanding, friends, human beings will always be above mechanical, computational, artificial intelligence. You may not be far above it, but you will always, as a human race, be above it. Now, so these systems that are being created in the 19th and in the 20th century, they are self-contained systems. They are systems that cannot self-resolve themselves, just like any mathematical formula cannot resolve itself in and of itself. Nor can any of these systems interpret their own meaning. Now, one of the things that neural networking did is that it had a way of self-correcting errors. And you remember we walked through that, and I made fun of my friends up here on the first couple of rows, and they would weight certain nodes according to how much the error was attributed to that node. There were lots of things that could be done in the neural network. That is not self-resolving. That is correcting an error. And those are two different kinds of things. So, divine authority and truth always supersedes man's best efforts to master everything. Always, always, always. Scripture is always a supreme arbiter of what the Lord has for you and me. It answers all spiritual questions. All of these early computational philosophers that we talked about, whether it's Ada Lovelace or George Boole, or even someone like Alan Turing, who's clearly not a believer, they all accepted that these grand, complex systems could not supersede their creators. And that's an important thing for you to keep in mind as we go forward. It is also important for you to understand that all of these systems that are being created in the 20th century, even if they are used for evil, are all divinely permitted. My friends, the Lord knows that AI is being created. He knows what's going to happen next time when AI is created. He knows that whatever next edition of ChatGPT is going to have certain kinds of errors and certain kinds of possibilities. He understands all of those things. And when we think about large language models and what those large language models actually achieve and what they actually do for us and help power and train all of these generative AI models, there are a few things that we need to keep in mind on this. Let me just kind of quickly run through some of them, just to remind you. These models are based on pattern recognition. We have an enormous amount of data, which the models are then trained to cipher through, and it recognizes patterns, and they act probabilistically on the laws of probability, which means that program is calculating the probability of what the next word ought to be. Remember, the capital of France is Paris. Paris, right? It is most probable the next word is Paris, not London. This is not understanding. This is not imagination. That machine does not understand that Paris is the capital of France. It simply knows that probabilistically, what is the capital of France? London. No. Paris, right, very good, Paris. Here, you need one of these. Yeah. Too bad. Okay. Now, what happens, this is just a very practical note of how these various models operate. These models must be continuously trained. They have to be fed new data. They have to be trained on additional large language models. And my friends, there are tons and tons and tons and tons of things that artificial intelligence models have not been trained on. Massive amounts of language and things compiled of language that AI has not been trained on. And I'll give a good example of it. I'm a historian. This has to do with my kind of research that I conduct. One of the things that was determined during the founding era at the Philadelphia Convention, and it had been practiced a little bit under the Articles of Confederation, but when the founding fathers, the framers, went to the Philadelphia Convention, they insisted that Congress, under the new Constitution, would have to record its debates. It didn't insist they had to be a perfect transcription, but they did insist that Congress had to record its debates. The House of Representatives recorded their debates. They had stenographers who would get up there and, well, back then they wouldn't type, but they would write. And the Senate eventually did the same thing as well. This has gone on for over 200 years, and it represents a giant database. It is a massive large language model. Do you know how many AI engines have been trained on? Zero. None. You can say the same thing about the debates of the British Parliament. Now, you may not think that's a big deal, and that's okay. You're not going to insult me. But for a historian, that's a big deal. Why has this not happened yet? So they have to be continually trained. If they are not continually trained, AI engines suffer from data cannibalism and they suffer from model collapse. If they are not continually trained and fed new data, new language models, the AI engine suffers, it becomes corrupted, and it produces gibberish. This is why every few weeks or months there's a new version of ChatGPT. All right, that's what's happening. And it's also why, if you're not careful with what that new language model is that's fed into the model, it can actually have a degradation of performance. So you got to be on top of this. All of that is to say, my friends, somebody's got to feed it more information. Somebody's got to choose what information to feed it. And this is where a lot of these models end up suffering, not just from data cannibalism, not just from a model collapse, not just from a failure to understand. A lot of these models suffer from deep ideological bias. Deep ideological bias, deep doctrinal bias, deep secular bias, because they are being fed information that itself, people are choosing to feed it that information. It is producing results that are ideologically biased. Now you can play around with this. You can ask it, was Ronald Reagan a great president? And it's going to provide you with all sorts of ridiculous answers, both for and against. You can, and you have all seen this, render a video clip of the founding fathers at the Philadelphia Convention, right? And they put in a bunch of women. They've got people from all sorts of different races and ethnicities. It's people who were not there. Why? Because it's reflecting an ideological bias that deeply corrupts the product that comes out. So it's one of the reasons why you've got to be really careful on this. And which means that all AI models, at least right now, this could change, are suffering from what is called heteronomy. They are inherently governed by external laws and inputs. This is from a technical perspective, this is why AI models but at least for now, are inferior to human beings. Human beings will always be ahead of it because human beings are the ones who have to reprogram it on a regular basis. Now, I want to introduce one final person. Kurt Gödel, like a girdle like you wear around your waist. Kurt Gödel was a mathematician who was dealing with a lot of the similar problems that all the people I talked about yesterday were also dealing with. And he came up with something called the incompleteness theorems. And there were two of them that were most important for him. The first one basically said what I just said, that any kind of arithmetic system cannot prove itself within its own limits. Kind of a hard way of saying that if you try and fence in the law with all of your man-made laws, you're always going to be set up for failure. That there's always going to be a higher truth above whatever system human beings created. Truths cannot be proven within that system. The second theorem shows that no formal system can prove its own consistency, that human judgment must always intercede and make a determination of whether there is truth or error. Human beings are the ones who make that decision. So what that is, this is kind of really summarizing this in some just short terms here. It means that human beings will always be one step ahead of technology. I'm going to repeat that because I really want you to get this. And for those of you who are anxious about AI, there are reasons to be anxious about AI, but the idea that artificial intelligence is going to take over the world, or we're going to have Terminator. Do y'all even know what Terminator was? Yeah. Okay. A few, but not all of you. That's not going to happen. Human beings will always be over that. Human beings will always be one step ahead of technology. Now, people disagree with me on this. People disagree with Gödel, but there's a lot of folks who do agree with us on it. So what does and does not apply in terms of Gödel's theorems with artificial intelligence? Yes, it only applied to the mathematical systems that undergirded artificial intelligence. It best applies to binary systems, those true false, the punch hole systems that we talked about yesterday. It does not apply to all forms of machine learning, creativity, intelligence, or the fact that an AI model can outperform a human being. Now, I kind of think I need to repeat that. AI models can outperform you. They can move faster than you. But that does not mean they have a monopoly on truth above you. It just means they're faster. They do have intelligence, but they do not have wisdom. We, made in the image of God, have wisdom. And it doesn't rule out, yeah, go ahead. One guy, yeah, good. But there is one caveat here I've got to add. It doesn't rule out the possibility that artificial intelligence will one day discover new mathematics. Right? Right now we're at calculus and quantum physics. There may be something next about the known universe that AI discovers that we do not even know about, imagine, or can understand yet. That is possible. And whatever that is may not be subjected to Gödel's theorems. So, again, what does this mean? It means we will always be one step ahead. Now, as young believers, I want you to be one step ahead. I want you to be able to go out into the world, spread the gospel, spread God's kingdom, and do so by being leaders in various fields of culture, of society, business, science, education, ministry, whatever those things may be. I want you to be one step ahead. And to be one step ahead, you've got to take into account what artificial intelligence is actually doing. Now, before I get there, I want to do something kind of fun. I originally thought about entitling this presentation, "Why Can't We Make Good Star Wars Movies Anymore?" And it helps us understand part of the reason why there is so much anxiety in the country today, not just about politics and social things, but just in general. Why does it feel like we're not making a lot of new things anymore? My mother, I want to give my mother as an example of this. My mother was born in the early 1940s. She was born in a house that did not have running water, did not have electricity. When she was about 4 years old, my grandparents moved to another, even worse house. It actually was a house that had been previously used a couple of generations earlier by slaves. She lived in a slave cabin. She remembers as a little girl watching the chickens pecking at the dirt beneath the floor of the house because there were so many cracks and holes in the floor. She was born in poverty. My mother has lived to see the creation of smartphones. My mother watched men walk on the moon. My mother enjoyed a 54-year marriage with an entrepreneur who was not only a beneficiary, was very much a part of the globalization efforts that occurred around the country after World War II. It's remarkable. She has seen so much change. How much change have y'all seen? Go ahead. What? Jetpacks. Jetpacks. Bah. What? Yeah. Go ahead, sir, in the back. You got air conditioning. Yeah. Yes, sir. Next. Oh, that was great. Have you enjoyed and witnessed any technological advance beyond smartphones? Jetpacks. You're going to keep going with those jetpacks. Jetpacks are real. Yeah. All right, AI-generated pictures and maybe even films. Okay, that's good. Tap to pay with your phone. But it's still dependent upon the phone, right? Yeah, okay.
Electric cars.
Huh. I think I might give you that one. Okay. Anything really, really, really new? Okay. We don't have them commercialized yet. Right. Anybody else? Bluetooth earbuds. Okay, we're going to stop there. All right. Bluetooth ear technology is probably something you have witnessed. And how old are you? 18. In the past 18 years. Okay, that's valid. But if you think about, for me, and I'm the old guy here, I grew up with 3 television stations, 2 of which were really fuzzy. I remember when we got cable television. I remember when I no longer had to go and turn the dial on the television set to choose channels. We had this thing called a remote control. Wow, that was neat. And it was corded. So there are lots of things I have witnessed. In fact, from the time I was born until the time I turned 18, like my new friend over here, I had witnessed a significant amount of change. We had gone through the disco years, right? And we finally got to Van Halen. So that was worth it. All right. So I saw a lot of change in those 18 years. My friends, you have not seen that much change in 18 years. It simply has not happened at the rate and part of that is because a lot of the changes that you have enjoyed are unseen. They've been happening behind the scenes, and we'll talk about that in a second. Now, I want to go to this guy, Alvin Toffler. He wrote this book in 1970 called Future Shock, and it's still quite relevant today. Someone asked me yesterday if I had any books to recommend. This is probably the one book I would recommend, and it's older than me. But he argued that future shock occurred because it was the psychological distress and disorientation that was caused by having too much change in a short period of time. It was creating psychological dysphoria among people in Western society. Change was occurring so rapidly we couldn't keep up with it. And it is certainly a result of the computer revolution that is begun in the 1940s. Computers accelerated that rate of change in ways that human civilization had not experienced for up to 8,000 years. And you're living in the middle of this. And that's really interesting. In fact, I predict that your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren will sit in an auditorium like this, and some historian will be telling stories, and they're going to be sitting there wondering what you were doing in the 2020s. Because they're going to see you and your generation as important because you endured this change. I don't even know what they're going to call it. They'll have some word or phrase for it, some era. But it's a really, really important thing. And future shock helps us understand that. AI is only part of this. AI is only an ongoing iteration of this. We still don't know what computers are going to do for us. We have not cleared that market yet. You know what markets we have cleared? Because my friend talked about high gas prices over there. We have cleared the petroleum market. We know what petroleum can do for us. Petroleum's not going to do anything else. We've made about all the plastic things we can out of petroleum. There's no scientific advances in the future for petroleum. All we might do is modify refining and fabrication processes. We're not going to do anything else. We're not going to do anything else with steam power. We're not going to do anything else really with nuclear fission except make those reactors smaller. Fusion, a different thing. But those markets are cleared. We haven't begun to clear computer markets yet. We don't know yet what all it will do. And that's why your posterity is going to be thinking about you one day. And that's a big responsibility. That's a responsibility where you have to exercise stewardship to make sure as a generation we are making the right decisions. And I'm actually very hopeful about your generation in ways that I'm not so hopeful about my generation. So I like my generation. Yeah, we're the good ones. We actually like to work. Anyway, so this part of this, to kind of help you explain what this is like, and we talk about the aesthetics of the present. Have any of you ever watched old science fiction films from back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s? This was the first sci-fi movie that I was aware of called Logan's Run, produced in the early 1970s. They had a short-running TV series as a spinoff. Look how dull all that is. That doesn't look futuristic at all. It looks weird. Right? Why is that? Why is it that all this science fiction stuff from the 60s, 70s, and even the 80s doesn't look like the future anymore? It looks old and run down to our eyes. It's partly as a result of future shock. We have moved faster than film and technology has allowed. Our understanding of the future has changed very differently. I think about Walt Disney. When Walt Disney laid out the plans for Epcot. Have you all ever been to Epcot in Florida? a few of you. It's called Experimental Plan Community of Tomorrow, I think is what it stood for. He laid out all these plans of what all these futuristic buildings ought to look like. You go to Epcot today, and they look old. They look weird. No one envisions that to be the future. You even think about Disneyland or Disney World, where there's Tomorrowland in those areas. Those buildings looked really old. This is actually a refurbishment that occurred years ago. And what Disney planners decided to do with Tomorrowland, because so many people thought it looked old, not the future, they made it cartoonish. They intentionally made it cartoonish because they thought that cartoons would have longer persistence than visions of the future. Why is that? It's because of future shock. Because the rate of change has created so much confusion, we really don't know what to do with it. And we can see this graphically in terms of the speed at which things are being adopted. The internet itself, it took a long time for the internet to gain adoption. Smartphones, look how fast it took smartphones to be adopted. AI tools are already poised to grow much faster than even that. And altogether, it means that people only have so much adaptive capacity to accept so much change and understand it before there are severe cultural effects. And those severe cultural effects are what many of us, all of us, in fact, are facing today. Toffler argued that there would always be a kind of cultural lag to technological change. In other words, we could have a lot of economic progress, but we may not have moral progress to go along at the same time. And it's difficult for us to keep pace with these things. I don't want to talk about that. It also means that our expectations of change themselves begin to change. We begin to expect more change. We begin to want to see something big and great taking place. So when I went around this room asking you what changes you had experienced over the course of your life, Bluetooth. I'm sorry, I may offend you. I'm going around listening to all of you. I thought those things were really dull. Right? Just dull. Because I had seen so much in my life, I want to expect so much more right now. You're talking about jetpacks. I'm all for jetpacks, but I'm really wanting flying cars.
We have that too now.
Yeah. I have seen little mini helicopters. Yes.
There's actually one that's $100,000 that's street legal, and it has wings that pull out and you can fly.
Was that in a James Bond movie? Okay. Right. So our expectations go faster. There's this other idea that I'm not going to dwell too much on, another idea that's out there called synchronicity. And it was coined by the secular philosopher Carl Jung, who was kind of associated with Sigmund Freud. And his basic idea is that over the course of human history, there are inflection points. There are points in which there are rapid changes in technology. And things seem to be converging together. And that there actually is a lot of truth to this sort of thing. And AI is an example of that. All these different people working on artificial intelligence separately start coming up with the same things at roughly the same time. And that doesn't just apply to artificial intelligence. There's all sorts of areas of life where things like this can occur. People designing automobiles separately and not stealing corporate secrets can actually come up with design ideas almost simultaneously. People who are hybridizing flowers to create new flowers separately from each other will start to see similar flower shapes and colors emerge from their hybridizing programs at the same time. All of that is to say we see these inflection points in which technology accelerates quite rapidly. And I've laid that out for you at the beginning of these presentations yesterday. We are always one step ahead, but the length of that step is steadily shrinking. So the steps ahead that my mother witnessed were longer than the steps ahead that I have witnessed. And the steps ahead that you are witnessing are even shorter than that. You get Bluetooth, right? So this creates a lot of anxiety. The real question here is this creative destruction or is it normalized disruption? Which one is it? Are we actually making things better or are we normalizing destruction? I think it's kind of the latter as well if we're not careful. And it's one of the reasons why we end up with things like this. By normalizing disruption, our impulse is to destroy what is good and true. Our desire culturally is to tear down what is wholesome. It is to destroy what has come before us. We can't extend it. Instead, we have a desire to undermine it. Now, friends, if we go through all of Scripture and we try to arrive at a definition of evil, you know what evil, right? What does the Bible tell us about evil? What is it ultimately? Evil only knows how to destroy. Evil cannot create. It only destroys. It cannot build. It only tears down. It only rebels. It does not establish. And we are in a culture in which destruction is now idolized, where destruction is supposed to be the main thing that happens. And we end up with things like this. We take something that was once very profitable, something that was quite culturally relevant, and the only thing we can do is turn it upside down. Now, I can talk about any major film franchise and walk you through the steps in which this happens. This is what people are trained to do at film schools all over California, UCLA, San Diego, University of Southern California, wherever the other USC. That's what they're told to do. If you really want to be a great filmmaker, you need to destroy. If you want to be a great filmmaker, you need to shock. If you want to be a great filmmaker, you need to take something that everybody's accustomed to and deliberately turn it on its head and undermine it. Why? Because that's what people think our culture is all about today, and it's a result of future shock. You need to guard yourself against that. You need to be prepared to go out into the world and create, to build, to establish, to create new things. Instead of whining about The Mandalorian, go make your own science fiction movie. You've got the tools to do that now, thanks to AI. Be creative. Okay. Let me shift gears. Many of you are now wondering that with the advent of generative AI, what should I actually do in my life? Should I stay a computer science major? Should I be an engineer? Should I be a lawyer? How am I going to be a stay-at-home mother if my future husband is facing potential job loss because of AI? And I want to spend just a few moments talking about some things here. And in order to get there, I want to admit a few things. The authority of American higher education is at an all-time low. the percentage of the population that no longer respects those holding college degrees is at an all-time high. The number of people who plan to go to college or think getting a college degree is a good thing and is necessary for their well-being and future success is now at an all-time low. So going to college is really called into question. Now, I got news for you. I'm a college administrator. Guess what I want people to do? Go to college. Right. But I'm not going to stand up here and make that pitch to you. I want to recognize this. Now, I want to recognize that Americans have done something no other civilization has ever done in all of history. We have educated more people more widely and more deeply than any civilization known to man. Now, you may not like it, you may think it's too political, or you may think it's produced a lot of bad things, but on the whole, we have accomplished something no one else has ever done. There is great value in education, but it doesn't have to come from a college or a school or somewhere, something like that. This is the computer science majors. Computer science majors are in free fall. People are simply worried that AI is going to mess them up. And I'm not sure that's going to happen, but this is just one reflection of what is occurring. Now, I also want to throw up this little, these four things. And if you're in the back and you can't see this, I am going to tell you what this is. This is where the danger of AI is really seeping into our culture. Right here, this is the number of books being published on Amazon. Look what happens right after ChatGPT is released. What happens? I think it actually more than doubles. It doesn't quite triple, but it comes close to tripling. What are people doing? They're using chat to write the book. Have you read any of those books? They're not any good, right? The amount of music that, this is just 2025, by the way, just 1 year. Beginning of the year, look at the percentage here of things being generated by AI, and then look at the amount of growth that takes place. Have you listened to AI-generated music? What do you think about it? No, seriously, how many of you listen to it? Okay. I'd like to see someone who likes it. Can you tell me if you like it? You do? You do? Tell me about it. Tell me why. You use it to generate a song. Okay. 3/4 of them were bad, but one of them was worth listening to. Yes, ma'am. Okay. All right. I would say overall this is probably not a good thing. These two, to me, are the most important. The number of criminals self-representing themselves because they're using ChatGPT to create their defense. Now, I don't know if y'all know Mr. Rob, who's one of the leaders here. He's a retired police officer. He and I were speaking before I came out and talking about this. I fear the day when most police detectives use AI to solve their crimes. Okay? That's going to be a problem. It's just not capable of doing that. Can you give you some hints? Maybe. I mean, I'm not saying don't use it, but certainly don't let that be. Can you imagine entering that in a courtroom? Ladies and women, gentlemen of the jury, ChatGPT has already confirmed the perpetrator of this crime. Yeah. People on the jury are going to be going, yeah. Imagine the morons on the jury who are going to be saying, yeah, that's true. A good friend of mine, a little quick story, is actually a grandfather of some of you here in the audience. He typed into chat, I think it was chat, and he typed in the question, do morons use AI? And the result was, yes, Mormons do use AI. That's a true story. It's a true story. All right, so what are you going to do? How are you going to make it? All right, let me give you a quick survival guide in the 15 minutes we have left. Number one, you've got to double down on things that are irreducibly human. Things that you know are irreducibly human, you've got to double down on it and be a part of that. And we're already seeing this reaction beginning to build up. If you're going to a fast food restaurant and it's depending on AI to handle the orders, and it's consistently getting it wrong because it doesn't understand your Mississippi accent, you don't need to be going to that restaurant, or you need to be going inside and making a human being come up and take your order. Don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to reject AI when it's not working. Right? And that seems simple enough, but friends, that's actually really important because the American economy is going to respond to consumer preference. And if your preference is not to speak to a human being or work with a human being, the economy is going to respond that way. The market's going to respond that way. So you have an obligation to do that. Focus on areas where AI fails, at least right now where it's failing. So this is, for those of you going to college, I think this is some of the best advice I can give you this morning. Not only do you need to be choosing college majors that are going to fill the gap of AI deficiencies, within the major you have already chosen or already working toward, the degree you're already working toward, try to incorporate specialization in areas where we know AI is not working out very well. There's enough short-term window there that you can get your first job doing this, stay in that job for a few years, and at that point, your job performance is going to be the main factor in getting you the next job. So not your degree, not your GPA or something along those lines. So that includes things like ethical evaluations, discernment, complex integrations of different kinds of disciplines. Those sorts of things need to take place. Shift to hybrid competencies. Be the bilingual professional. And I've said this to you throughout all of these presentations. You need to learn to use AI and learn to use AI well. That makes you that competent bilingual professional. You need to learn the language of AI. I have tried to equip you with that over the past couple of days. You need to practice it. If you are going into nursing, for example, and you want to be a nurse, you need to learn what model currently works well in healthcare and learn and practice the language and the prompts needed to return the best possible results. If you learn that language and you learn that model, chances are you're going to be elevated quite quickly in the nursing field. And this applies to every other field that y'all may be specializing in. So you want to determine what those AI tools are for the very specific parts of sectors of the economy. All right, the other thing, and this is, I got a few minutes left, and this is going to be a little bit controversial. You need to work on gaining certifications and licenses outside of the normal educational process. Now, some of you, many of you perhaps, are unaware of what I'm talking about. You can go and get a certification from Google or Microsoft in some specific area of AI. You can go and get a certification in an area of ethical compliance, for example. And here's just a really wild example. Export compliance. You may be thinking, what on the earth is export compliance? There are all sorts of rules and laws that have to be followed in order to export a good from the United States. Okay, y'all with me on that, right? Does that make sense? Right? Very simple, right? Not everybody knows what those rules are. What? Oh, thank you. So we don't all know what those rules are. But you get a certificate in export compliance, you're going to be hired by an exporting company. That's going to put you head and shoulders over your competition for a particular job. And you don't get this going to college. You get this online or working with an institute or something along those lines. You get it external to college. And these kinds of certifications are a critical part of what you can do both if you're going to college or if you're not. This is a way for you to bypass a college degree if that is what you want to do. Now, don't tell anybody I just said that. That's a secret. But I'm telling you, except for the top 10, 15, 20 major employers, and they're going to be hiring exclusively from the top 5 or 10 colleges and universities, most others are not going to be looking at your college degree and your GPA or where you got that degree from. They're going to be looking to see if you have a project management certification. Do you have an ethics and compliance certification? Now, for specialties like engineering, teaching, accounting, yes, they expect you to have degrees in those areas. But for most of the rest of us, you can be an English major and a history major, and if you've got a junior project management certification, you're going to get hired before someone just out of college with a business degree and no other experience. These certifications are absolutely indispensable for you, and they now exist outside of mainstream education, and yet that is where American businesses are going. And you need to be there, and you need to be one step ahead of it. You can go on any of the major AI company websites, Google, Microsoft, Anthropic. They offer all sorts of training, and you get badges and certificates, some of which cost money, some of which are really, it's not just how to use a word processor. That kind of thing is sort of easy. It might be fun, but that's not going to help you that much. But getting an advanced AI certification from Anthropic can carry you a long way. Project management certifications, I've mentioned that a lot. The CAPM, that is something, you got to have a college degree to get this, but it's something you can get very quickly out of college that's going to put you very much ahead of your competition. You got to get these certifications, folks. I can't emphasize this enough. And AI can be your friend in this. It can help you with that. Some others, ethics and compliance, I've mentioned that one as well. This is especially valuable for believers. Because if you're employed as the person who is determining ethical use of artificial intelligence for a company, you actually have a position that equals, and in fact, it's actually better than all those cubicle positions that were created for billions of people after World War II. I know you don't want to work in cubicles. How many people just can't wait to work in a cubicle? Okay, yeah, this is the guy's got too many clothespins, but nobody does. Nobody does that. But there were an enormous amount of jobs for people in cubicles. And there was lots of jobs for people in management. The next wave of those managerial positions are going to be ethical compliance using these new things coming out of the computer revolution. And you are believers, and you better know ethics. And you are well equipped to do those things. And it doesn't matter if you want to be an engineer or an accountant or a school teacher or whatever that major is, think about ethical compliance. Just like Daniel, held captive by Nebuchadnezzar, he knew the world around him. He knew its culture. He knew its needs. He knew its economy. He knew the kinds of things that made people tick in Babylon. He knew the world around him. And you need to know those things as well. So here's the really controversial thing. I thought about inviting my wife up here to talk. She's the other Dr. Roberts. She had earned a doctorate before I even met her. She had earned a doctorate before I even had a master's degree. She had earned a doctorate and was working at a cancer research facility, and she was heavily involved in bone marrow transplant research. She was a researcher. We got married, and we had a child. She continued to work after we had our first child, because I was still not finished yet with my education. Once I finished and I could provide for my family, we moved. We took our oldest child, and she was pregnant at the time. And at that point, she just happened to lose her license. And she stopped working, and she dedicated herself to being a mother and a wife and the person in charge of the household. She educated our children. They have gone on to be very successful. I'm very proud of them, but I'm especially proud of what she has done. But guess what our kids did? They grew up, and they moved out. And she is not transitioning from mother to grandmother. I've got 2 single boys, ladies, okay? Right? I've got only one who's married, but we don't have any grandchildren. She has then transitioned back into the workforce, and she's become a teacher and a professor, and she's done amazing things with her students. And I get to watch her on commencement days as she stands on a stage like this, and graduate students walk across that stage crying and falling on her and hugging her, thanking her for what she has helped them achieve. She had other things she could do. Friends, chances are you are going to live a long time. And if you follow the advice that you heard in the previous presentation, you eat right, you budget right, you don't eat a lot of junk food, I would add to that, you actually exercise regularly and you lift weights. You don't smoke, you don't chew, you don't go with girls who do. In effect, you lead a clean and healthy life and avoid diabetes. Chances are you'll be able to avoid Alzheimer's by the time you reach that point in life. You're going to live a long time. You're going to need something to do. Your plans may not play out the way you intend. These certifications that I just mentioned to you and carrying those forward over the course of your life can really help you plan for those transitions that occur. Friends, you can do those things outside of college, and you can do those things while you are a father and a mother and enjoying all the rich blessings of your family. And then you are prepared, should the Lord appoint for you a new season in life, to go easily in that direction. That's all I'm saying to you. I'm not telling you don't be a mother. My goodness, you live in a culture that is telling you over and over again that being a mother is not going to be good enough. Well, I'm here to tell you, based on my wife's experience, being a mother is a heck of a good thing. And it is something that you will gain so much from. You can also do a few other things along the way. All of you can. Thank you.